Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Packers Unscripted from Packers.com. I am Mike Spofford, joined, as always, by my trusted colleague, Wes Hodkowitz. We're coming to you here from our studios at Lambeau Field to review last Thursday's trip to Detroit. And unfortunately, Wes, had ended in a disappointing 34-31 loss to the Lions at Ford Field, a walk-off loss, field goal, 35-yard field goal on the last play of the game. I would characterize this as a disappointing loss, but by no means a discouraging loss when I look at where the Green Bay Packers are. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, in any other year, Packers went up against the best team in the NFC, and maybe they'd still be leading their division. Maybe they'd be second in their division. Unfortunately, we know what the North is this year. So that was the hard part about it when you realize that the Packers now are 9-4, and they've lost to, statistically, in the standings, the three top teams in this conference, in Philly, Minnesota, and now Detroit twice. Green Bay played a lot better in this game than they did the game at Lambeau Field a month ago. I thought you saw some of the corrections that they needed to make. They made those. The problem was, though, as we've seen time and time again, Detroit is one of the most consistent teams in the National Football League in terms of executing what they are looking to do on the field.
Right.
They run the ball efficiently. They don't take negative yardage plays. The more comfortable that Jared Goff gets, the less that it's on his shoulders to kind of play hero ball, the better that this team plays. And defensively, I absolutely tip my cap to them, because for a defensive front that was as beat up as they were going into this thing, the Lions, I thought, really brought it to Green Bay in the trenches in this game. So there were a lot of positives. There were some areas for improvement, some negatives, but at the end of the day, and we'll talk about this later in the week with Seattle and what's coming at, this loss to the Lions, as long as Green Bay channels it appropriately against Seattle, against New Orleans, against Minnesota, and then Chicago, I mean, this could be something that really helps propel you into the playoffs. They just need to make sure it doesn't snowball the opposite way, because Green Bay played them really tough.
Yeah, I thought so too. And I want to do I'm going to call it the reverse Dom Capers here.
Oh, yeah.
Capers always used to go to...
Let's start with the negatives.
Start with the positives, okay? There are positives to talk about from this game, and I want to get to those, but I want to do those later because I want to start with the regrets, because there are a lot of regrets for the Packers. You mentioned Detroit's banged-up defense and how they kind of took it to Green Bay, especially early in the game. The slow start on offense in a game that turned into a shootout, right, frankly, offensively. The slow start going punt, fumble on the first three possessions, especially when that second possession was starting near midfield, when the defense for Green Bay had gotten a stop of the Lions deep in their territory. So you get good field position on your second drive of the game, down 7-0, but you don't do anything with it and you punt. And then the fumble occurs at the end of an explosive catch and run by Christian Watson, a gain of 20 yards. You're across midfield, but he doesn't protect the football. It comes out and the Lions get it back. They turn that into a field goal. So you've gone punt, fumble, and you're down 10-0. So the slow start there, a very big regret. Obviously, fourth downs, another regret in this game. The Lions end up converting 4 out of 5 on fourth downs. 2 of those are fourth and goals that turn into touchdowns. And then obviously the 4th and 1 call at the end, which allows them to then run the clock out before they kick the field goal, so the Packers don't get the ball back. And really, that was kind of the culmination of the biggest regret for me defensively in this game for Green Bay. You know, you're not going to just shut down the Lions. They're too good, right? They're going to make plays. They're going to get points. What was really the regret defensively in this game for Green Bay was the last 2 drives, because the defense had gotten an interception and a 4th down stop back-to-back in the second half. The Packers offensively turned both of those into touchdowns, which really kind of, changed the whole complexion of the game. But then Detroit's last 2 drives, they were just slowly, methodically grinding the clock. They get a touchdown, and then they kill the last 3.5 minutes to kick a field goal. Those are the regrets that stick out to me. And then of course you have the offensive pass interference in the red zone, which the Packers only end up getting the field goal that ties the game instead of a touchdown to take the lead. All of those fall in the regret category. I'll let you expound on any or all of them if you wish.
Yeah, I kind of feel like Aaron Rodgers here. I was like,
Okay.
like you're asking, and then I'm like,
I threw a whole lot at you.
No, it's not even that. It's just it when you say expound on what I want, there's so much to expound upon. You touched on a lot of it there. Let me just start off with this. What happened on those last two series? Green Bay needs to get stops, no question about it. You can't let them leak down the field the way they did, absolutely. But this is what Detroit does.
Yeah.
76 offensive plays, 36 minutes of time of possession. They wear on you. They lean on you. They play physically, and then they just try to sort of push you over the course of a 60-minute game. Not to say that that's what they did at the end. I think Green Bay was competitive from beginning, middle, and end. But it just shows you when you apply that type of pressure, what the Lions are able to achieve. And this was one game, Mike, for as many regrettable moments as there were for Green Bay, Detroit had a fair amount of them. The interception that Jared Goff has that turns into a Keyshawn Nixon pick, his first pick of the year that leads to points. Them deciding to go for it on 4th and 1, I believe it was, or maybe 4th and 2, at their own 31-yard line while they're leading 24-21.
Right.
I mean, that's a controversial decision in the third quarter.
Yep.
And all the other ones, the fourth downs, I agreed with all of them. And you had to read this when I wrote this in Inbox. I'd be curious to see your thoughts on it. Matt LaFleur's point about a week or two ago about the red zone, and when you're passing deep in the red zone, either the play is there or it's not. You're going off schedule.
Yeah.
The bang-bang nature of it is what ended up happening at the end of the first half, and then obviously the one that they converted late. And credit to Jared Goff. He was decisive. They were effective in what they were trying to run. And to me, in addition to the final two defensive stands, that was the difference. If Green Bay keeps them out of the end zone in one or two of those instances, this thing maybe goes a different direction. It certainly would have had a different flavor going into halftime.
Yeah, when you talk about those 4th and goal plays, those passes being there right away, I totally agree with you there. One of the keys to that, though, is the ball's on the 2-yard line or 3-yard line in both of those instances where when you have Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, defensively, you have to be prepared for anything they might do. They might run it. They might throw it. It can be anything, which does make, and the Lions know that. Obviously 4th and goal from the 7, if they decide to go for that, you're going, okay, they're probably going to throw the ball here, right? Well, 4th and goal from the 2, you don't know. And the Lions use that to their advantage because those running backs are so tough and are capable of pounding those balls in from the goal line. The Packers actually did a really good job stopping other than the very first one at the beginning of the game, stopping those guys from getting the rushing touchdowns. They made Jared Goff throw the ball into the end zone, but unfortunately they weren't able to stop those. It was really disappointing to see on the second 4th and goal where they scored in the second half that the Lions came out of the huddle and kind of quick snapped on the Packers, and the defense wasn't set and wasn't ready, right? That's the kind of thing that can't happen in a crucial situation like that. And it's not like the Lions have been doing hurry up stuff and this and that throughout the game. It's like, boom, they just, they came out of the huddle and they're like, they rush up to the line and snap the ball and they caught the Packers. So you have to give them credit. And if you're the Packers, you have to say that can't happen. You have to be ready for the Lions to try something different at any moment. And that's how Detroit stays a step ahead of opponents most of the time.
And kudos to Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson on this too, because Green Bay, if you look at the film this year, Mike, and all these teams do when they're playing them, Green Bay has been extraordinary in goal to go against the run this season. How many times has it been where the Packers have actually gotten off the field there, or they found a way to turn over the football? It happened again in this thing, and it happened primarily because teams are trying to run against them and they're not having success. Detroit made the right correction. They tried to sneak it, they tried to run it, they tried everything, and then finally they go back to the pass. They trust their quarterback to make the right read, and he achieves that. The disappointing thing for me is that Detroit finishes this game, Michael, even with an Amon-Ra St. Brown 10-yard run, 34 carries for 111 yards, 3.3 yards per carry. Jahmyr Gibbs had 43 yards on 15 carries. That's the number 3 in the fan voting for the Pro Bowl right now. 43 yards on 15 carries, and one of those went for 20 yards. Green Bay held them in check a lot of the ways you have to hold them in check. But the difficult thing about facing the Detroit Lions is, even if you keep them in 3rd and moderate, there's a chance they're still going to go for it on 4th down. And when you stretch out 4 plays like that while trying to get 10 yards, I mean, it's an aggressive mentality. We'll see whether or not it's good enough to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But certainly it's something that keeps you on edge the entire time. And in this case, obviously it was probably the difference in the game. It was my key to the game. So
yeah, I agree. And that's where I wanted to start with the positives in this game for Green Bay, because as much as you look at 34 points on the scoreboard, that's not what you're looking for defensively, obviously. But I thought the Packers' run defense, by and large, was pretty darn good against maybe the best 1-2 punch at running back in the league. Certainly the best 1-2 punch at running back the Packers have faced this season in Montgomery and Gibbs. You were throwing out some of the numbers. I went through a few other numbers looking at specifically Montgomery and Gibbs. 29 carries between those two guys.
Yep.
And they didn't have 100 yards. 94. 29 for 94. You will take that.
Yep.
I mean, credit to the Lions. They stick with the run because they make you honor it. And that is what helps out Jared Goff so much, is because you do have to invest so much in stopping the run. But those 29 carries between those two backs, only 5 of those 29 went for more than 4 yards.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 24 out of 29 rushes by those two running backs, the Packers held them to 4 yards or less.
Yep.
That, I think, has been the most positive sign for this defense moving forward. And as the Packers hit the stretch run here, and again, on our next show, we'll talk about Seattle and what they're doing with their running game. But the Packers' run defense has been pretty darn good. And I think if that's something, and the Packers are banged up now in the secondary, the injuries to Evan Williams and Javon Bullard, and we'll see how this all shakes out here the final month of the regular season. But if the Packers can hang their hat on some solid run defense, then you kind of you make the adjustments the rest of the way, right? With everything else that you have to do. I thought Green Bay's run defense was darn good in this game.
So it's a catch-22 kind of situation here, because I thought Green Bay almost sort of pushed Detroit out of the run, but it forced them to sort of synthesize that production with their screen game, which they did do, 11 catches for the two running backs between them. So in one way, you look at that as almost a little bit of a feather in the cap, that it's like, okay, they had to find a different way to generate early down yardage.
Right.
But you still, when you look at what Green Bay did the 2 games going into this, and I don't remember the exact stats, but I think it was 30 carries for 83 yards in the 2 previous games. Packers hadn't had a stretch like that. I think only 2 stretches like that since like 1950, where they had back-to-back games where they held teams in check that much without allowing a rushing touchdown.
Sure.
So that is a positive, and I draw a lot from that. I think conversely, Green Bay had their own struggles trying to get the run game going, but this game again proved that even if things aren't blocked up perfectly, Josh Jacobs is going to make you right. My key to victory for this game, Mike, was the Packers need to run the ball better than Detroit did. They didn't technically do that when you look at the total yardage, when you look at some of those things, but again, I look at Josh Jacobs and what he has done and the way he has been able to really make that running game and own it and make that his own. Goes over 1,000 yards for the season, now has 8 rushing touchdowns in his last 4 games, a streak that we have not seen outside of Aaron Jones. This guy is legitimate. And I just think when Green Bay is going to be, if you can keep him healthy, get to the postseason with him, I mean, I think number 8 is going to do some real damage. Run defense, run offense, things that you can correct on both sides of those things. But the more and more I watch Josh Jacobs, Mike, and I know I went on kind of my own little tangent there, Green Bay struggled for so long. And this goes back to the McCarthy era. It's not even just on Matt LaFleur.
Sure.
They struggled so long on goal-to-go situations, and what do you do when you're at the 2 or 3 yard line? John Kuhn used to take some of those handoffs, and they tried to, other running backs that aren't always successful with it.
And we saw for a few years it just became the Davante Adams show, the Aaron Rodgers to Davante Adams. That's how when the Packers got inside the 5, that was, other than the one year Aaron Jones had the 16 rushing touchdowns, which I believe was Matt LaFleur's first season. Yep. Jones had 16 rushing touchdowns that year. Other than that, it always felt like it was like either Adams was gonna get the ball in goal to go, or the Packers might be kicking a field goal. So I totally get where you're coming from.
Yeah. So I mean, Jacobs having a 3 touchdown game, and that's the hard part too. You have Christian Watson where he has the early fumble, but kind of like his game last year against the Lions, I thought Christian Watson was really critical to what Green Bay did. And if at the very least, I mean, we could talk about the OPI if you want to, but the 46-yarder to start the second half, I mean, that was huge for Green Bay to get that play early on, get that score, that response to how the first half ended, and it nearly was enough to pull out this win.
That's what I was going to say with regard to Watson. I wanted to point out that, he did everything he could to make up for that early fumble. The 4 receptions for 114 yards, the big one down the sideline early in the third quarter, all of that. Watson was the explosive play guy. We saw Dontavian Wicks get involved again. 4 catches, 49 yards. Romeo Doubs missed this game. It was still in the concussion protocol. So what Dontavian Wicks was able to contribute. We saw Tucker Kraft again. He was doing his Tucker Kraft things. 3 catches, 41 yards, gets the touchdown. The 21-yard reception where he kind of gets labeled there near the goal line, but does the kip up, and now he becomes a social media hero and everything with Shawn Michaels.
I love
Wes has a story on that on Packers.com, by the way, for those who are interested in what Tucker Kraft had to say about all the attention that play has gotten.
This guy, man, I'm telling you, dude, like, they're going to build statues for him if he plays long enough. I mean, touchdowns are great. He has 7 of them, leads the team. He's over 500 receiving yards on the year. But those type of plays, his mentality, he said it to Bill Huber after the game, and then he was talking with us in the locker room on Monday about it. He did not want to let Jack Campbell, Kirby Joseph, any of those guys get any type of juice, any type of momentum off that play for laying him out.
Right.
He wanted to do something that was going to tell them, I'm still here. And he got to his feet quicker than Jack Campbell did.
Yeah.
Those are the type of ball players you want to have on your team. It's not about what you say. It's not about throwing your helmet at someone's kneecap. It is about how you respond in moments in which physicality are warranted. Tucker Kraft did that.
Yeah.
And this dude, man, I'm telling you, when you're talking about heartbeat players, heart and soul players, guys that you want to ride with, you want to have your identity built around, it's Tucker Kraft, because he does it the right way. He's not looking to go out there and injure people. He's not going out there to try to be somebody that is going to become this, big quote afterwards. He wants to go play football. He did it that way in South Dakota. He's doing it that way in Green Bay, Wisconsin. He is going to play the game the right way. And I can't tell you how much respect I had for him. And I got to say this too, before we go to a different direction. The way we handle our things, people that are frequent watchers of our shows, read our content, you're at the post-game press conferences, I'm in the locker room. I need to say this once. Christian Watson again proved why. Again, while you have a heart and soul player like Tucker Kraft, the way Christian Watson handles himself and the emotions that were felt after that game, the fumble, the OPI. He stood at his locker, his visiting room locker, and talked about how it's on him. It's not about the officials. It's not about what happened in the game. It's up to him. If Kirby Joseph steps up and stops and basically sets a screen, he's got to find a way around it. If there's a fumble after a 20-yard catch, he has to find a way to protect the ball better.
Right.
Christian Watson, man, when you're building the culture of team, and I've said it numerous times this season, when adversity hits, that really shows the true character of an individual. I wish my character was stronger. It's not. I'm going to be honest with you. But I think Christian Watson embodies everything you want in a professional football player, and that, Mike, is the end of my diatribe.
All right. Well, he is a true pro. I want to make a couple more points on this game.
Please do. I just made 12.
Move on. No, that's okay. Because I realized this as I was kind of jotting down some notes, and I know we call this Packers Unscripted, but I was jotting down some notes for the show, and I didn't realize it until this moment. Talking about the Packers defense and how I started that whole discussion by saying, hey, the Lions are going to get their yards, they're going to get their points, right? The Packers defense in this game had back-to-back stops in the first half and had back-to-back stops in the second half. The difference in the game, quite frankly, was what the Packers offense did in those moments. The back-to-back stops in the second half, the interception and the fourth down stop, were turned into 2 touchdowns. The back-to-back stops in the first half, a punt from midfield and then a fumble, and you get no points off of those. So in a game where you know your defense is going to be taxed because the Lions are explosive and dangerous and efficient, and they will grind you into the earth offensively, the times that the Packers defense had the upper hand, the offense only cashed in on that sort of half the time instead of all the time, which is what you need to do when your defense does get those stops. And then before we move on, I'm going to make one comment about the officiating.
Oh, good.
Because I've thought, and I've thought this one through, and I'm not even going to talk about, other than to say it right now, the OPI on Watson and the Kirby Joseph collision and all that. I'm leaving that one aside. Because what bothered me when I looked at this game as a whole, and a lot of people talking about the missed calls and this call and the non-call here and whatever, what bothered me the most about the officiating in this game are two calls that were about as inconsistent as you can get in this league. And what I'm talking about are the opening possession for Detroit. They have 3rd and goal in the 7-yard line, and Keyshawn Nixon gets called for illegal contact in the end zone when the receiver runs into him. So the incomplete pass doesn't count.
Interesting call.
The incomplete pass doesn't count. So instead of I'm assuming the Lions wouldn't have gone for it on 4th and goal from the 7. Maybe that's a poor assumption, but I'm thinking they would kick the field goal there on the opening drive of the game. But instead they get a 1st and goal inside the 5 and they punch it in. I don't think the illegal contact had a whole lot of impact on the play, but by the letter of the law, if you say that's illegal contact, okay, fine. But then on the last possession of the game, the Packers, after a holding penalty on Detroit, have the Lions in 2nd and 17. And Amon-Ra St. Brown runs a deep in cut, shoves Keyshawn Nixon out of the way, and catches a 16-yard pass to make it 3rd and 1. What bothers me the most about NFL officiating is Keyshawn Nixon getting called for that illegal contact on the opening drive of the game, which is a 4-point call, and then they don't call the push-off by the offensive player on the last possession of the game, which instead of, they call that, it's 2nd and 27 from near midfield, and instead it's 3rd and 1.
Yep.
It's a 26-yard swing. So one call is a 4-point swing, the other call is a 26-yard swing, and there is zero consistency whatsoever with how those two calls are made. So I'll let you comment if you want to. I'm going to leave it at that. That is what is the most frustrating thing about officiating in the NFL and how it impacts these very important games.
My grandma Mary used to always save her coffee, and the next morning would re-brew it, re-warm it up. And I feel like that's what you've just done to me with this officiating topic, is I'd cooled off, and now going through that, which was a very good, very convincing, very well articulated.
All I'm saying is if both of those calls are called in a consistent manner, either the Lions have 4 fewer points on the board, or the Packers are probably getting the ball back at least at the end of the ball game. So that's my point.
Christian Watson was talking about how he had to do things differently. I can tell you one thing that Keyshawn Nixon needed to do differently after the shove from Amon-Ra St. Brown is he needed to act like he got hit by a Mack truck and bounce down the field for about 5 or 10 yards, because that's the only way John Hussey and his crew are catching stuff. I'm going to say this once, and we'll move on from it. If I don't see a John Hussey officiated game the rest of the season, I'll be totally fine with that.
I will second that motion.
This, in my opinion, was the worst officiated game the Packers have been a part of since the 2020 NFC Championship game. And Michael?
I would agree with that.
Why am I saying that? Because of the consistency of the calls.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I always praise Bill Vinovich, why I always praise some of these crews across the league is, one, you call the stuff that matters in the moments that it mattered. Otherwise, it's football. You can throw a flag on every play if you want to. At the critical times, calling those types of penalties. And two, though, the overarching thing to all this is, just like teams have their own game plans, just like they have their own adjustments, officials need to be understanding of how they are calling a game and stick to that standard. Yeah. And that's 6, 7, 8 people all working together, understanding the way in which they're going to go through this thing. I deleted this from Insider Inbox on Saturday, but I'm going to say it now. There was not a single call made in that game amongst professional officials that I don't think a four-man crew in the WIA and Wisconsin high school football couldn't have made. There was nothing I saw in that game. Everything that they called was either a deliberate reaction. You know, we talk about the Dan Skipper incident there with Quay Walker.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you this right now, Packer fans, lay off Quay Walker. It's going to get corrected. The issues that whatever the coaching staff wants to do with Quay Walker, they're going to handle that. What happened in that incident, that could have been any linebacker. I understand Quay shoved him back. I understand that there's a history there. I get that. Don't tell me that Dan Skipper didn't know that, especially the way that he was handling himself throughout the course of that game. The way that this thing went down, you move past it, you move on. Players aren't going to talk about it. Coaches aren't going to talk about it. Don't want to get fined. I don't think I can get fined. We'll see. But this game, by and large, Detroit was a better team. Matt LaFleur says it all the time.
Yep.
You have to play above the officials. Green Bay didn't. But my God, man, like this was one of those games where I got done with it. I'm just like, this is what the NFL wants. This is how they want their game officiated, and that's how it goes.
Yeah, it's too bad. But we will move on. And first to some sponsor business. Sirius XM NFL Radio delivers hard-hitting analysis and up-to-the-minute NFL news that true football fanatics need 24/7, 365. And at Cousin Subs, we have something for everyone. Like our Wisconsin cheese curds, mac and cheese, golden fries, and creamy shakes, all paired with your favorite sub or sub in a bowl. Cousin Subs, 50-plus years of better.
Hey, I want to close on one. Well, we'll get to all the other games quick, but I want to close this discussion on the Lions, though. I will say this. I'm a huge pro wrestling mark. Kind of mentioned it there with the whole Tucker Kraft thing.
Yeah. I
love the rivalry of this thing, though. I do.
Oh, yeah.
The Packers and Lions, and I said this in a couple of my comments on Twitter and on Inbox the last few days. Like, this is as cool and as real and as true of a rivalry as I've felt during my time. You were there, NFC Championship game in 2010. I wasn't. I don't know what that felt like with, Jay Cutler and all that. By the time I started covering the team, Jay was sort of already on the other end of that.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, it was competitive with the Vikings for a few years, and there's these moments there. But in terms of just the perennialness of this, it feels like this is something that's going to go on for years. And I love that because I think that's when football's at its best. Pro wrestling sells its storylines based on the feelings that it is evoking. And I feel like, especially in my own personality, there's plenty of feelings that I feel right now between this Green Bay and Detroit thing. So we'll see whether or not they see him again this season. But if they do, it's going to be a boatload of fun.
Yeah, and I hope, and we're not going to get ahead of ourselves, but I hope we're doing a show previewing round 3 of Packers-Lions in the 2024/25 season. Where things stand right now, in the NFC North, Detroit is 12-1, Minnesota is 11-2, Green Bay is 9-4. As we talked about last week, losing this game takes the division out of the picture for Green Bay. It is now wild card or bust. The good news is the Packers are in very good position to get a wild card. It would appear that if they, at 9-4 right now, if they can get to 11 wins, they will almost 100% assuredly be in the playoffs, and they may be able to get there depending on how some other things fall. They may be able to get there with 10 wins, and they will be going for their 10th win this weekend out in Seattle, yet another primetime game, Sunday Night Football, and Seattle was certainly involved in one of the more significant results in the NFL from Week 14. They went on the road 2 weeks after beating Arizona in Seattle. They went on the road to Arizona for the rematch against their division rival, and they beat them again. So that is now 4 straight wins for the Seattle Seahawks. They are sitting atop the NFC West, a division that was kind of a big muddled mess there for a while, now has a clear front runner, and it is the Seattle Seahawks, and that is the Packers' opponent. We'll get into them a little bit more on our next show, but the way things are shaping up, the Packers are in tremendously good position to get a wild card spot and to try to make another run at this thing like they did last season.
Yeah, very much so. And a win over the Seattle Seahawks on Sunday Night Football go a long way into achieving that. What I found interesting about the game that the Seahawks played against the Cardinals, because it was their second time facing them in 3 weeks, it was a different recipe for how they won this thing. They don't have Kenneth Walker III, so Zach Charbonnet has to go in there. He's played a little bit this season, balls out probably their best rushing performance this season. This is not a great running football team. One of the points I'm making in Insider Inbox for Wednesday is that in this shift to Geno Smith, and obviously Pete Carroll's no longer there, but they've changed the complete chemistry of their offense.
Yeah.
It went from a very run-heavy, this team's every year with Russell Wilson is going to be a top 5 rushing offense, to like they're 27th or 28th in the NFL, and they are passing at nauseum. Now, some of that's because of the games in which they're playing, but that's also kind of the way that Geno Smith plays.
Yeah.
This game, though, illustrated, one, what happens when Geno doesn't throw an interception. They won the takeaways, and they were able to establish the run. A lot of lessons Green Bay is going to be able to learn from that going into this matchup. But 4-game winning streak now for Seattle, a division where they were looking for somebody to sort of claw up to the top of this heap. It's them, and it looks like the Rams are right behind them now. So, an impressive win. And, talk about a tone setter within your division to be able to knock back Arizona, knock them out of the lead, and then have them, really push them down a little bit in a matter of 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That was a big momentum changer here for the Seahawks.
Yeah, Kyler Murray a few weeks ago in Seattle was only able to put 6 points on the board and threw a killer pick 6 in that game that allowed Seattle to win the first one. And then he threw 2 just terrible interceptions in the first quarter of the rematch that the Seahawks turned both of those into touchdowns, built a multi-score lead, and pretty much kept it there the rest of the way. So you look at just how the Seahawks have beaten the Cardinals twice in the last 3 weeks. It's because of the turnovers of the opposing quarterback, and certainly Jordan Love has done a much better job taking care of the football lately. The fumble we talked about with Christian Watson, that's the Packers' only giveaway, only turnover offensively in the last 3 games. Really 3.5 games going back. You go back to the first half in Chicago with the interception down by the goal line. The Packers had gone a long stretch there without turning the ball over, so that will matter as well. Before we go, just your thoughts quickly. You mentioned the Rams, 44-42, highest scoring game in the NFL this year. They pull it out over the Buffalo Bills to keep the Rams very much in the playoff hunt at this point. And I don't know if you saw the end of that game.
Yeah.
I don't know what in the world Buffalo is thinking when you're on the 1-yard line and you have all 3 of your timeouts to potentially take on defense with you, and you call a quarterback sneak, which then fails, and you have to burn your 1 timeout, which then puts the game entirely on the onside kick instead of giving your defense a chance to actually give you one more shot. I don't even know what would possess anybody in that situation to call a quarterback sneak, or even just burning the first time out because the quarterback sneak fails. You're better off hurrying up, spiking the ball, and having 3rd and goal on the 1 rather than burning the timeout that you burned. It was such a complete cluster of how they managed the clock at the end of that game. They had a chance to pull off an amazing comeback, and they blew it because of clock management. It was disappointing. I enjoy watching the Buffalo Bills. I enjoy watching Josh Allen, and I was really hoping they might be able to pull that one out.
The Bills are dead to me now. I was kind of pulling for them for a while, and then they go and muddle this up against the Rams, which could have really helped out Green Bay's playoff chance. I think it was this game alone that actually made Green Bay's wildcard chances go from 99 to 98%. Hey, listen, 2 things. Buffalo forgot how they beat the 49ers in this game. It's like they go completely away from the run. They fall behind early. They're passing. And then at that very minute, it seems like they always fall into this trap where they forget that Josh Allen, yes, he can run, and yes, he can score touchdowns with his feet, but he is a quarterback, and he's probably one of the top 3 guys in the NFL. And they just resort to these type of things. Well, he's 200 however many pounds. He's going to get himself in. He doesn't. And I thought maybe it's the wake-up call they needed, kind of like I felt like in some ways, Kansas City a couple weeks ago had a wake-up call they needed. But the fact of the matter is that the Rams and what they did in this game, I thought Matthew Stafford, this was probably his best game of the season. Puka Nacua, they're using him in different ways now.
That was a monster game by Nacua.
Yeah.
And he was
when he's right, the guy is just a dynamic football player.
He completely changes the complexion of that Rams offense, which of course the Packers did not see that when Green Bay played LA because both Nacua and Kupp were out of the game, were injured, and not playing in that game. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see now what the Rams do with this, because everybody is saying now, they put up 44 points. It's like, oh, the Rams are dangerous. Nobody seems to be talking about the fact that the Rams just gave up 42
Yes,
points.
for sure.
So how much does that make you a legitimate playoff game?
Yeah, because
I don't know.
Are they the worst
see.
defense?
Matthew Stafford has been there and done that. They have a lot of weapons on offense. Can their defense actually put together the run that they need to get a playoff spot here? We'll see.
Yeah, no, I mean, at the very least, it's going to keep things interesting. The NFC West, a lot of those matchups are in the balance, hovering in the balance.
The Rams are just trying to get to the final game of the season, one game back of the Seahawks, because then they play Seattle in Week 18, and they
be on Sunday Night Football.
Essentially steal the division there by beating them to sweep them and get the tie, and then they would win the tiebreaker based on the sweep. So the Rams are trying to stay one game back of the Seahawks. So Rams fans are big Packers fans this week, quite frankly, because they'd like to see the Packers knock off the Seahawks.
Last two things really quick.
Yeah.
San Francisco ran the Bears out of the building. Bears had 4 total yards of offense in the first half.
Yeah, first half total yards, I believe, was 319-4.
Yeah. Another reminder, I just want to say this. I was talking to some people in the locker room about this on Monday. I get that people were not high on Matt Eberflus. I understand what happened, but putting your passing game coordinator and making him the interim offensive coordinator and then making him the interim head coach might not be the best recipe for having success. That's a tough echelon to climb in like 4 weeks.
Yeah.
But then I want to close on this. Kansas City's the final boss. No matter what, Kansas City is the final boss. You think you got them, you don't got them.
You don't got them. They are somehow, some way going to win the game, including their third kicker of the season, clanking a chip shot off the upright, but bank shot with the correct angle, and it goes in, and the Kansas City Chiefs win yet another game, and which was huge because they now have because of the Buffalo loss.
Yeah.
Kansas City now has a 2-game cushion with 4 games to go to get the number 1 seed and the bye in the AFC, a position that the Buffalo Bills and the Pittsburgh Steelers were hoping to push for. But now both of those clubs are 2 games back with 4 to go because of the bank shot.
I love, too, the fact that you're talking about teams being 2 games behind. Denver now holds a 2-game advantage over Indianapolis and Miami for this number 7 seed in the playoffs.
Yeah.
With a month left to play. Things can still change, but there are 6 teams that have been eliminated from playoff contention in the AFC. I think there's is there 2 in the... Or there's 1. The Giants are eliminated in the NFC. That's it.
Well, and you talk about Miami. They basically barely stayed alive by winning in overtime against the Jets. A big field goal at the end of regulation, and then they get the opening drive of the overtime, go down and get a touchdown. Aaron Rodgers doesn't get the ball back, and Miami stays within shouting distance of that final wild card spot in the AFC.
Everyone chasing Bo Nix.
Buckle up, folks. These last
what a week that was.
Season are going to be fun. We've gone way overtime today. Yeah. Apologies to our producer Zach, but we know he'll deal with it.
We only did 1 show last week. We had a lot to get off our chest.
That's true. But I do also have to say that of the 2025 NFL Draft is right here in Green Bay, April 24 through April 26 of 2025. Visit greenbay.com/draft25 for more information. And with that, we'll call it a wrap on this edition of Packers Unscripted. Be sure to follow all of our coverage of the team on Packers.com. For Wes, I'm Mike. Thank you for tuning in, everybody, and we will see you next time.